I didn't have a nanny growing up, so I spent a lot of time with her in that candle store, and she used to hand dip and hand carve these really beautiful creative pillars, and it smelled so amazing in there. And, some of my earliest childhood memories take place in that store, surrounded by these amazing comforting scents, surrounded by candles, and it's just like me and my mom. And I just remember that time and that part of my childhood as being so idyllic and joyful and simple. And my parents would ultimately get divorced when I was 9 and the store would be sold. My mom and I would move to Hawaii. My dad stayed in San Francisco. And ultimately, I become estranged from my dad. Things got a little bit more complicated. And I always looked back at that like before time as like a time of just such simplicity and like pure childhood. And I always, found myself going back there when things were complicated, or tough. My mom was a single mom all of a sudden. She was working all the time, working really hard, trying to make ends meet. And, I think that I always had it in my head that I wanted to do something in fragrance, possibly in candles, because the smells of that space were so comforting to me. And whenever I got a whiff of something that smelled similar, it would really be able to transport me right back there. So I've always like very deeply, innately believed in the power of fragrance to uplift you, shift your mood, and really help you in that way. But I would eventually go on to work in fashion. So I was an editor at Elle and Elle.com for several years. And then I started a social media agency called Community Atelier and spent a decade plus really building brands online for other companies, beauty, fashion, a lot of luxury hospitality, and really fell in love with the idea of brand. It wasn't really until 2020 hit and we lost like 50% of our clientele that I suddenly had the time and space to really ideate what I wanted this fragrance brand to be and what I really wanted to make of it. At the time, you mentioned health. I was also going through fertility struggles. I, was going through IVF. I had been trying to get pregnant for a little while. And I was very paranoid about everything in my house and everything that I was putting in my body, on my body. So I cleared everything out. I did a ton of research around the candles in my home. I had all of the usual luxury suspects that I had been burning and loving forever. And it was a really dismal landscape. The brands that I had known and loved for so long, they were either black boxes of mystery, very much on purpose, or, they were using things like paraffin wax. And that is a known toxin, really bad when you burn it in your house. It's a fossil fuel. And so I thought that there had to be a way to marry my like very early love of fragrance and its power to uplift people and put that into a luxury candle that was clean and safe and, had the best possible ingredients in it. So that's really where Net was born.
So many things in that story that I want to pull out, because even though no one has had the same journey as you, many of us can connect with pieces of it. So even to think about the power of smell and how if I say, people who are listening, okay, what's a powerful smell from your childhood that takes you back to a place of innocence and joy and connection and family? A lot of people wouldn't say a candle shop, but they might say the smell of a pie or a spring rain or crayons. There are these different smells, and it doesn't matter how old we get, those smells and the feeling connected, it's so powerful. My
Yes.
grandmother, who she passed away when I was in high school, and every now and then a woman will walk by wearing her scent. And
Mm.
it immediately, I mean, it's been decades, and I know that that's the scent that my grandmother wore.
Mhm.
And it's like this candle for you is it's so relatable. It's so
Yeah.
relatable that it just can sort of wipe away some of the pain when we go
Hmm.
to that smell.
Yep. It's so powerful. I think that the sense of smell is really the only one of the five senses that has that kind of power to immediately transport viscerally, physically, to a time and place specifically, from your past or a person that you want to hold on to.
And as you created your scents, was there one particular one that takes you most directly into that candle shop with your mother, or have you tried to put a little piece into all your scents?
The one that I really reminds me most of my mom and of that time is a candle called Another Life. And it was actually the very first candle that we finalized when we were developing the brand. And it's this very, very comforting vanilla, cocoa shell, lavender scent. I don't know if we sent it to you, but if not, we have to. It is really like the most deeply comforting fragrance ever.
Sounds lovely. I can't imagine my office smelling anything other than honey, actually, now at this point. The other thing that you said that I think probably had people like stop in their tracks is, wait, paraffin wax is bad for me? That's not like a widely known thing, right?
It's not. I feel like it is because I have just read so much about it, but I guess it's not. It's, it's a fossil fuel and a lot of candles used to be made from it. Not so much anymore, but there is this one very widespread luxury brand that probably every candle lover has at least one candle in their home, and it is 100% paraffin wax. It's very surprising to me. Um yeah, it's just not the healthiest wax to choose from. I think that there are natural waxes now that perform really well. I think a lot of brands might use paraffin wax, the ones that do, because it tends to burn evenly and throw scent really well. The performance is really good, but inherently it's like not that great for you and it's not good for the environment. So natural waxes are a little bit harder and trickier to work with, but I think that the payoff makes it worth it.
So there's such a tangible takeaway. Go home, check your candles, friends. Let's make sure that what we're putting in our house is something that isn't potentially dangerous, not just to us, but also to the environment. And you bring up a really good point, Carol, which is as such a thread through your career of luxury. And people oftentimes mistake expensive price for
Mhm.
safe. And that's not always the case.
No, that's not always the case. I actually think that we're going through a pretty necessary shift, at least I hope we are, where sustainability used to be looked upon as this sort of crunchy granola thing, but I actually think sustainability is the new luxury because sustainability is truly so luxurious. It's so expensive to be sustainable nowadays. If you are creating something, it is much more expensive to select the sustainable option in almost every single circumstance, which is why you probably see a lot of brands skimping on those elements and not being as sustainable as they could because they're trying to protect their margins and their bottom lines. Like if the bottles, the bottle caps on our perfume bottles are 100% recycled plastic, and they were 10 times more expensive than using partially recycled plastic or virgin plastic. But we elected to go that way because that's something that's really important to us and to the brand. So, I think that it's truly like the most luxurious option of a bottle cap that we could have chosen. And that goes across so many different categories in the sustainability space. I think that if you see a brand doing things truly sustainably, that is actually so luxurious. And you can be a bit comforted that they are not cutting corners on their formulas. You are truly kind of, getting the best from them.
I totally agree with you. I mean, it is not just the quote unquote right thing to do, but it is the future. And we know that Gen Z buyers want this. And ultimately brands, many of the, especially the really large brands, make decisions based on what the consumer wants. And at some point, I suspect that we'll see more brands shifting because that is what the consumer is demanding. And they're going and looking at packaging and saying, okay, is this actually sustainable? And do I feel good about bringing this into my home? Is this responsible? And that's where your brand started.
Exactly. I remember very clearly that when Augustina Spader, that very luxurious skincare brand, first started, I ordered a bunch of stuff from them and it arrived and their packet, they fixed it now, but their packaging was so over the top excessive. I mean, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience to unbox and unwrap but there were boxes upon boxes and everything was like hard cardboard coated in paper. There was no single ply paper. It was just, and it was all wrapped in plastic. And extremely excessive. And I just remember being like, I can't feel good about buying this brand. And I'm not someone who has a lot of time. Like, I'm not a returns person. I'm not, I'll just suck it up and give it away. I don't have time to return things or like write to brands about things. But I was like, I have to write them an email. So I did. I wrote them an email. I was like, I love your products, but I cannot buy from you if this is how it's going to come packaged, because this is so excessive. It's painful.
I think that every year when, like the end of the year, when nonprofits send out their impact reports, and oftentimes they're like a big booklet, and it's like, you're a nonprofit and you are asking for money, and I don't want to pay for you wasting in money when really you could just send me a digital link and I would be more interested, and you could put video in there. It would be a lot more compelling to tell your story. And I would feel better about making a donation to you. We're looking at all things
I
this
agree.
way.
Yes.